Hello friends, it is Stasia and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about all the spooky thriller vibes. I don't really read horror, so I can't really give any horror recommendations, but I did want to put this out there in case you're looking for any thrillers to read. I do read quite a bit of thrillers. I actually haven't read that many recently. I've been on my romance kick, but I still have tons of recommendations. So I have 5 stacks of books here, but there's only 3 books in each category. I was looking at my shelves and I was like, wow, I don't really see that one talked about, and they're like, wow, that one was really talked about, and I agree. So all of that fun stuff. So I have 5 categories and 3 books in each category. The first category that I want to talk about are the OGs. So these are the books that have came out many moons ago, but very well loved, and I think that if you have not read these, you should still read these. I'm not sure if it'll pack as much of a punch now, if that I've read so many thrillers, but these 3 are probably the 3 books that got me going into thrillers, and they're probably easy to guess, but yeah. So the first one is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. If you've never read this book, if you've never watched this movie, I don't know how, but I wanted to throw it on here in case you don't know what this is. So this is a very well thought out, psychological, sneaky little thriller. So it follows a husband who is basically getting investigated for his missing wife. One day he comes home and she's gone, so they're all trying to figure out like what happened to his wife, whether or not the husband was involved. So this is like the OG domestic thriller. Super good. And then the next one I have is The Girl on the Train. This is very much unreliable narrator, so you really don't actually know much about what's going on, but it's about this lady who goes on the train, and every time she's on the train she sees a specific house and kind of starts to create their story in her head, like, oh, the husband does this, the wife does this, they have this many kids, whatever, do what you want, girl, until one day she's on the train and sees something she thinks she's not supposed to see, because she's on the train, so obviously she didn't see the before and after. She sees a very small portion, but that is enough to kind of make her eyebrows raise and be like, hey, what's going on? So yeah. And then the last one is a very popular domestic thriller, and that is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I think that this one was very well done. This one is very twisty. Unlikable characters, domestic, in where the husband seems to be controlling and they're not really sure what's going on behind closed doors. So those are the 3 OGs that I think if you haven't read yet, you definitely need to. I do actually want to reread them to see if they still hold up, but yes, love these. So the next category we'll go into is YA, and since these are YA, these are more mystery than thriller, but these are 3 popular YA books that really pack the punch, even though they are still YA. So if you're looking for a YA book along the like spooky mystery thriller vibes, but you don't really want anything like too crazy, these will definitely do it for you. These are all also very talked about much, so if you haven't read these yet, not sure how, but these are the YAs that I would recommend. So the first one is Ace of Spades. This follows 2 characters who are going to this very privileged private school where everyone there kind of has money. So these 2 characters are the only students of color there, so that alone is pretty weird, but then they start to figure things out that, you know, maybe things here aren't really what you think it is. Yeah, so it has a lot of good commentary. It is just a fun time. I will say that I think this book is broken up into 3 parts, and part 1 I think was very slow moving for me, but it does like all pay off in the end. So there's that one. The next one is Sadie, and this book has a mixed media sort of like podcast element, or like, is it? I think it is like a podcast. So basically it follows this girl named Sadie who is going on this journey trying to find her missing sister. She runs into people, she uncovers things. It's just a whole thing. There's a podcast element where they are also like commentating on Sadie and what she's doing. I don't think Sadie's not in, but yeah, so it's a very fun audiobook because of the podcast element. Super easy to follow, super quick read, highly recommend. And then the last one is the start of a series. I've read all 3 books now, and I am planning on doing a video reviewing all 3 books, but the first one is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So this first book follows our main character Pip, where for her senior capstone project she chooses a case that is apparently closed. The guy is in jail, but she doesn't think that that's the guy who did it. So she goes on this wild ride trying to figure out what actually happened in this case that was apparently closed. But yeah, so Pip is a great character, love to follow it, and it was just a fun time. So if you're looking for a YA, these 3 are definitely my recommendations. They are very talked about, so if you have never seen them around, now you have, and I definitely recommend picking them up. Now we're going to go into like normal adult, new adult, I'm not even sure what you would necessarily call it, but these are just normal thrillers. These are 3 books that are very hyped, that I think are worth the hype. There's a lot of hyped books out there that I don't necessarily agree with, but these 3 I do agree with, and I loved them. I gave them all 5 stars. I thought it was a great time, so we're gonna go into that. So the first of which is The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Buchanan. I actually love this author duo, all of their books, so personally I think you can't go wrong with any of their books, but I also think that this is definitely their best book. So this is a domestic situation where a wife reaches out to a therapist, and they are scheduled to go through like couples counseling, but the counselor doesn't necessarily know who to believe, and she doesn't necessarily know like what is actually happening within this marriage, but there's only so much that they'll share. Obviously the therapist has secrets of her own, so she's also trying to figure out her life. Very twisty, super fun, short chapters, overall a great time. And then the next one I have is The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. This is actually my favorite Lisa Jewell. I think I've read 3 or 4 now, but this one is definitely my favorite. So this one follows multiple timelines and multiple characters. Well, this follows a woman whose daughter goes missing one day at a party with her boyfriend, and no one really knows what happened there. So it's like many years later as well, where the mother is now just living her life with her grandson, who her daughter left behind, and they're just trying to figure out like what's actually going on. They're realizing that things that were said were not the whole story, so they're trying to see maybe her daughter's still missing, or like what's going on with that situation. Like I said, there's multiple point of views, so you kind of don't know whose point of view you're supposed to be believing. I thought it was very twisty. I got through it super quick, and I loved it. I thought it was great. And then the last one is another loved one. Obviously this is the hyped category, so that is The Silent Patient. I also read this author's other book, The Maidens, which I super loved, but I can see why that one's not necessarily for everyone, like with certain twists. But anyways, The Silent Patient was really fun. I super enjoyed it. This follows our main character, Theo. He's like a psychotherapist, psychoanalyst, something of the sort. Yeah, so he's a criminal psychotherapist, and so he reaches out to this patient named Alicia. not entirely sure how to say it, but he reaches out to the hospital that she's staying at because he wants to work with her. And the reason why he wants to work with her is because Alicia is in this facility because however many years ago she got convicted of murdering her husband, and since that day she has not said a word. She's never talked at all. So Theo is like, I think that I could get through to her. I think that, you know, I can help her to talk again, because after all these years she's never talked. So it follows Theo unpacking the story, as well as Alicia in like before everything happened, and what like led up to that certain situation. So overall, I think this one was worth the hype. It is very quick to get through, and I really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this one, I do still recommend the author's second book, The Maidens, but I know that people still prefer this one over the second one, so it is what it is. Okay, the next three are books that are not talked about. So these are books that I loved that I don't really see talked about anywhere unless I'm the one talking about it, or it's like someone that I recommended the book to. So yeah, we'll get into that. So the first one is A Killer Harvest by Paul Cleave. This follows our main character, Joshua. So Joshua goes through a transplant for new eyes after his father dies. So in this operation, he literally gets his father's eyes. Like his father's eyes are put into his head. So they never really thought anything of it. It was kind of like a experiment sort of situation. They never had any problems doing it before, but Joshua suddenly starts to get like these visions, and he's not sure where they're coming from. It's of people he doesn't know or in places he's never been to, so he's not entirely sure what's going on there, until he realizes that these visions that aren't necessarily nice visions could have been from his eyes from his father. So these are visions that his father has seen with his eyes before. So that kind of leaves Joshua wondering like what to do with this information, trying to see like where the puzzles actually fit into the story. It's twisty. I had a great time with it. The next one is The Visitors by Catherine Burns. I didn't give this one 5 stars. I believe I gave it 4 stars, but it's still like super fun. It's also pretty short too. So this follows Marion, who lives with her brother John. And John is kind of controlling. Marion kind of just follows the rules. She doesn't look at things she's not supposed to. She doesn't comment on things she may see or may hear. She kind of just ignores it so that she can continue to live under his roof. Until one day, John has an accident and Marion is forced to try to pick apart this story and see who her brother really is, and whether or not she accepts that. Things like that. It gets super twisty. This is sort of an ambiguous ending, so if you're not into that, this might not be the one for you. I believe that's one of the things that I actually loved about this book, though. I will admit this book can move a little slow, but I still thought it was super interesting. I still super liked it, and yeah. The last book that I have that is not talked about much but I super enjoyed is Death in the Family by Tessa Weigert. Not exactly sure, but this is an isolated setting situation where this family goes to the family house on an island and someone dies. There's like a storm, so they're not entirely sure who did it, but a detective comes and tries to see what is going on, you know, who had motive, what actually happened, trying to unpack the story. I thought it was very well done, super twisty, caught me by surprise. Overall, a great time. Okay, so those are all of my recommendations, but you may have noticed like that was only 3 stacks. So I do have one more stack of books that are on my shelf that I still really want to read, that are in the category of like thrillers. So we'll go ahead and talk about 3 that I really want to get to soon. So the first of that is And There He Kept Her. So I believe it follows a man who, you know, no one really pays attention to. He's kind of just there, but he does have his secrets. And one night, two teenagers break into his house, and Emmett, our main character, is trying to keep his past from being revealed. And there is also, so he has to, you know, protect himself. And then there is a former police officer, Ben, who is now the sheriff's deputy, and he is leading the investigation for said missing teens, who I assume are with our main man, Emmett. But I don't actually know much of what's going on. Still looking forward to it though, so this is what I want to get to soon. And then another one I want to get to soon is Rules for Vanishing. And I believe this is kind of like Blair Witch vibes. But it is like multimedia, so there are like newspaper articles, there's interviews, all of that fun stuff. But I'm not entirely sure what's going on. So once a year, a road appears in the forest. At the end of it, the ghost of Lucy Gallows beckons to travelers to play her game. If you win, you escape with your life. But if you lose, I guess you disappear. So I am looking forward to this one. It seems like it's just like, you know, once a year people can do this fun, terrifying thing, and if you win, you win. If you lose, who knows. And then the last one I want to get to is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I have not read a Lucy Foley yet, but I believe this is sort of like a isolated locked room sort of things. It says there's 12 residents. Everyone's a neighbor, everyone's a suspect, and everyone knows something they're not telling. So I assume maybe someone dies or something, and then everyone in this apartment complex becomes a suspect, but they all have secrets to keep. Not entirely sure, but that is that. So that's all my recommendations. I gave you 3 OGs, 3 YAs, 3 hyped, and 3 not talked about, as well as 3 books that I would like to get to soon. So I hope you enjoyed. You can like, comment, and subscribe down below if you'd like. All of my socials to follow me anywhere else are in the description as always. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!